So I am probably too dependent upon AI, and I know for many people that means I have the mark of the beast on my forehead, and that I'm uh, that I'm going down this path of no return, and that may be true. But I do like to look at stuff, and so I name my. I'm going to introduce Mark in just a minute, y'all. So those of you who are watching us or listen to us, I'm going to get around to it. I'm going to tell you the name of the podcast in a little while. So Mark, I'm uh, thinking about this podcast with you, and I said Franklin, and he says yes, Thom, and it just hit me. How many people have named their AI?
I
And
heard you do this the other day on a podcast with you and Sam, and I have questions about Franklin. I need to understand this better. I don't know what's going on.
well, I have Franklin, who is my right hand person, and then I have a administrative assistant who is AI as well. So it's I'm not going to advise you to get into it, Mark. You're doing too many good things at First Baptist Okeechobee. So just keep doing what you're doing. But one of the questions I said, "Hey Franklin, what's the most recent population data that you have on Okeechobee, Florida?" He said, "This is what he said, just to let you know. Hey, good to hear from you, Thom." He talks casually to me. He really does. And he said, our latest data is 2023, maybe 24, but anyway, I think it's 23. And he says there are 5,602 people in the town. And then he makes a parenthetical comment, and the county's not much bigger.
Yeah, there's about 40,000 people in the entire county. We are the county seat. It's Okeechobee County, and then the city of Okeechobee. And there's about 40,000 people in the entire place, and we're the only incorporated town in the entire county. It's just little wide spots in the road, little places that have a nickname. The rest of it.
Well, we're going to talk about that. You are listening to Mark McCarter, who is the pastor of First Baptist of Okeechobee. But even though it has a traditional kind of Baptist name to it, it really you act more non-denominational than denominational in some of the things that you do. And I'm not going to go down that path and get anybody in trouble, but just simply to say when people hear First Baptist, they're thinking, oh, yeah, that kind of church.
Yeah. We're 110 years old in May. So
Wow.
we've been around a minute. The church was founded the same year as the county was. The county was carved out of St. Lucie County back in 1915, and so we're 110 years old.
Wow. Wow. Well, we are talking to Mark McCarter, pastor of First Baptist Okeechobee. I am delighting in having two of our platinum clients, those who are part of Church Answers, but also friends who are telling their story. I've asked them to tell their story. I've known them for years, and I've asked them to tell their story because it's a story of what God is doing. And you got to hear it not only to be encouraged, but to know some things that you might learn as well. So now I'll say welcome to the Church Answers podcast. And as a reminder, our sponsor, Cheney and Company, the accounting firm for the church, 1,100 customers and growing. They're all churches. That's all they do. They keep people out of trouble. They find money for people. And he doesn't like it when I say that because I think, hey, I've come here to get some money for us. But their organization is so good that they are helping so many people, so many churches. They're in California, but it's in the cloud. So it's just a matter of conversation with them and then hooking up, and you'll be glad you did. All right. Now, Mark, let's start talking about First Baptist. There's so much to your story. I mean, you were a youth minister there, then you became pastor. You've gone through some staff. You've moved into another worship area. There's just so many things that are going on. But ultimately, I want to focus this back on what you're doing to reach people because your church is running almost 1,000 now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We had 973 a couple of weeks ago. That was the highest attendance in the church's 110-year history that we have recorded anywhere.
And it wasn't a special event, special day or anything?
No, sir. It was just Sunday. That's what's amazing. That's what's blowing us away is it's just a Sunday morning and we're like, look at all these people. I mean, it's really, really been a wild ride, and I have to give God the glory.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, none of us that are on staff at First Baptist, myself included, are smart enough to be making any of this happen. It's God.
Well, and it is a God thing that is taking place. And I've heard since I've known you, I've gotten to hear all kind of stories. I want to tell them all for you, but I'm not. Uh, you've been blessed, the church, and you have been blessed financially in this. You've been blessed with numbers. You've been blessed with staff. I mean, I'm just thinking about the staff person. I can't remember her name, who just marketing, social media, whatever.
Yeah,
She's
Mindy,
Mindy.
Mindy Jakewith. Yeah, she's our media and outreach director, and she knocks it out of the park. Brands everything for us. We do all of our graphics, everything in house. I mean, she is a wonder. I had a 2-hour meeting with her this morning. She is absolutely fantastic. That's one of the great things. And she was an in church hire. She was just a church member. And when we had an opening, we brought her on part time, and now she's worked into being full time. So we hired her from within.
That's a great story in itself. I love hearing those things. If you're wondering, like Thom, he's a Alabama fan,
Roll
and
Tide.
and over his don't put him down because of that. I mean, I know how y'all give me a hard time on that, but don't put him down on that. But over his right shoulder is one of those mini classic paintings. There's a glare on it, so I can't quite see what it is.
It's Jay Barker throwing the ball to Sherman Williams in the Citrus Bowl against Ohio State.
All
So it was Jay
right.
Barker's last touchdown pass, and big game. And Jay Barker's one of my favorites. I found that at an estate sale, paid almost nothing for it. It was a great get.
Yeah, it must have been an Auburn fan that sold it to you
I
then.
guess so.
So you talk to us first of all about the demographics of Okeechobee. You can start with the city or expand to the county,
Sure.
but it's basically working class and
Yes,
a few others.
very rural, very agricultural. We have a lot of ranches. We have some very large dairies in the area. We have a lot of beef cattle, naturally citrus. We're located dead in between Orlando and Miami. We're 2 hours south of Orlando, 2 hours north of Miami, right in the dead middle of the state. You look at Lake Okeechobee, the big, gigantic lake in the middle of the state. We're right on the northern tip. I'm probably 5 minutes from the lake right now, sitting in my office. So that's where we're located, and very, very, very rural, very working class. A lot of sweet, good people. Still a little touch of Bible Belt in Okeechobee, Florida. You'll still catch a little bit of that here and there. Definitely growing though. That's what's interesting. We've got a 400 home development going in. We're just seeing a lot of growth in the area. People are moving in from the coast because there's nowhere left. I mean, you
And
being over
sometimes
in Bradenton with Sam, this. There's no room left, so everybody's sliding in. So, I think Okeechobee is going to grow over the next, several decades, but it's still a very small rural town.
oh, it's going to grow. And I want to be clear on this though, Mark. Yes, you're having demographic growth, but you're watching the church grow when they're wanting significant demographic growth too.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Over the last year, our attendance is up about 45%. Our kids' attendance is up 60. Over the course of the last 10 years, we've gone from running 200, 250 on Sunday morning right when I became senior pastor to now we're running almost 1,000. So we've seen, significant growth, well beyond anything that I would have ever expected or anticipated anyway.
And again, just a reminder, it's in a town of fewer than 6,000 people in a county. What did we say, 40?
About 40,000 in the county. Yeah. The town's
Uh,
small. The actual square mileage of the town's small. So you don't have to get real far outside of the center of the town to be out of town. But this is not West Palm Beach. This is not, Bradenton. This is not Tampa. This is like a lot of rural towns that have Baptist churches in them in Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee. It's very typical to places that I grew up around and living in when I grew up in Alabama.
and you've got the accent.
Yes,
I
sir.
I grew up with that accent.
You should have heard me before I moved to Florida. It has moderated greatly. I now speak the King's English compared to what I sounded like when I moved down here.
I think some of our listeners going to say, "Yeah, they're both from Alabama." I can hear that. And there's so many paths I want to go, but I want to remind folks that you hear these stories about these pastors and what he has seen God do in an incredible way. And you're saying, oh, they got it made. I'll just give you some things if I can remember what's happened. Your mother recently died.
Yes, sir. Back right before Thanksgiving, my mom, she was 83, and she passed away very suddenly. Yeah.
Your dad has moved in with you.
Yes, sir. He's down at the house right now. Went and had lunch with him just a little while ago.
Your wife has been a cancer survivor, and that's
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah,
that is recent.
yeah.
Your daughter, your only daughter, has a condition, and I never can remember what it's called and what she has, but
Yeah.
she has a very delicate health situation. I'll put it that way.
Yes, sir. She has glutaric acidemia type 1. It's a error of metabolism. Her body can't process certain amino acids, and it's one of the more dangerous ones. She has been affected by it. Some of her both gross and fine motor skills. It's not one that affects you cognitively, but it does affect you physically. So she's been in every kind of therapy you can imagine. Some of the therapy she's been, I didn't know they existed. I didn't even know there's such a thing as vision therapy, but there is, and she's gone to it. So it's been a challenge over the last, and she's 10. So she was born right after I became senior pastor. So I've walked through being a senior pastor alongside dealing with a child with a incredibly rare medical disorder. She doesn't have a doctor. She has a team of doctors. I mean, she's got a list as long as my arm.
And so in the midst of this, you're leading a church in God's power. Give us some highlights of some of the things that are going on, and focus really as much as possible. You can say anything you want to, but focus on how you're reaching people with the gospel. And it may not be anything programmatic. It may not be anything that has a nice label on it. But as you continue to reach more people with the gospel, I just want you to tell the story so some people can be encouraged.
Sure. I'll start back about 6 years ago.
Okay.
I was just kind of looking at the demographics of the church and what was happening, and just trying to think, okay, Lord, what do we need to do here? Because we were growing some. We had grown. Giving was solid, but it was just, we weren't seeing a lot of baptisms. We weren't seeing the growth that I thought may have been possible. And I was like, Lord, what do we need to do here? And into my office one day walked one of our deacons in his late 70s, and we were talking about that very thing. And he told me, he said, why don't you just go to the recreation center? We call it the Rock, the Recreation Outreach Center. It's our gym. He said, just go to the Rock, do a church service over there, and do whatever you think you need to do to reach people. And I thought to myself, yeah, why don't we? And so we took 6 months, planned that whole process out, and launched it in November. And it kind of caught a spark. We really made it a relaxed service. Doctrine and theology, we are a conservative Southern Baptist church. I like to refer to us as we are based in historical Christianity.
Yes.
Never compromising doctrine or theology, but we kind of put everything on the table and said, okay, we can change stuff. We're going to try.
What's it going to take to reach people with the gospel without compromising the scripture?
Absolutely. So
that's your heart right there.
That's what we're supposed to be doing. And so my thought process of the entirety of the staff and leadership of the church was, let's figure it out. Like, we wanted to reach young families. Okay, what keeps young families coming to church on Sunday morning? What can we move out of the way? So we do breakfast. We do like a real breakfast. This past Sunday morning, bacon, eggs, biscuits, sausage, grits. It was ridiculous. I mean,
for our listeners, I want you to know that is a real breakfast.
That's real. That's real breakfast.
There's no foo-foo in there.
No,
that's just
real stuff.
Yeah, real stuff.
So some weeks we have sausage and biscuits and gravy and some easier things, but a lot of weeks it gets that big. And so we're like, okay, because our thought process was, how can I make it easy for a young family to bring their kids to church? What are the things that are in their way? And one of the things in their way, from my point of view, was you got to get up, feed the kids. You got to get them ready. You got to bring them. Okay.
Brilliant.
You show up, I'll feed you. And so that was kind of the route that we went, and it cost some money, but wow, has it paid off. So we started seeing young families come in. We made the service kind of a hybrid situation. We have tables and chairs and rows so people can sit around, eat breakfast, fellowship. We thought that would help build community around the tables. That worked pretty good for us. And very contemporary style of worship, in that service.
Not for the sake of being contemporary, though. It was just, what do we got to do to reach people?
Exactly. What do we need to do? Let's try. Because one of my things is, I was talking to one of our staff members on our youth pastor. I was talking to him on, was it last week? It was last Tuesday, I believe it was. And I told him, I said, I don't care if something you try fails. I care if you don't try. I can handle failure. I can't handle complacency and just sitting and not trying something. So we just started kind of honestly throwing stuff against the wall to see what would stick. And sometimes things fail. Like as the service grew, we needed more room. Well, we thought, well, let's have an afternoon service. So we tried an afternoon service at 2:30 in the afternoon, which a lot of churches on the coast, very close to us, within a 45-minute drive of us do. I can't tell you what an epic failure that was. It did not work at all. We did it for about 3 months and said, let's cut that out. We got to get rid of that. But our whole thought process was, how can we make it easy for people to come? How can we relate to them? How can we get them in the door? How can we help them make a decision? One of the things that we did along the way was we kind of, in our first service, we kind of stepped away from what we think about as a traditional invitation, and we went to what we call a response room. This wasn't new to me. I found this at another church that I had a meeting with our pastor.
All right, listeners and those on YouTube who are watching, I want you to pay attention now. He's going to talk about his response room. And this is a traditional church that in the past had a old-timey invitation, walk the aisle type of thing. And he moved to a response room at one point. And go on and tell the story.
Yeah, and in our second service, which is a more traditional service, I still do the down front, like more traditional invitation, but I find more people come to talk to me after the service by leaps and bounds. And I make myself, I'll be after the service. Come see me after the service. You don't feel comfortable coming down. So I see the same thing happening. What we did was we set up this room off to the side, made it really nice, put seating areas in it, like little chairs in clusters so people could sit and have conversation. And I tell people, you have questions. You have questions about baptism, salvation. Maybe you need somebody to pray with you. You know, something in the sermon hits you and you need to talk to somebody. And we have counselors and some of our pastors over there. So people will slide into that room, sit down, and there's nobody watching. There's nobody waiting to leave church, and they can take all the time they need. This past Sunday, there was one of our counselors in there with a couple, and she was probably in there with them for 30 minutes after the service was over, just talking with them. And he wants to be baptized. So we're going to baptize him in a few weeks. So I found that really spurred us. We were seeing growth numerically, and we were seeing growth, financially. Giving was doing very well. Numbers were doing well, but we weren't seeing salvations. We weren't seeing people coming to know Christ. And so when we added the response room in, that kicked it into another gear. It just made it, I don't know if it was safe or more comfortable or easy. It's like the last thing that I tell people is, hey, go to our response room. Don't leave if you have questions. And people go in there all the time, and the counselors love it. It's been really good.
Think about it, Mark. In the New Testament, when Jesus called someone, usually the response is immediately they went. Certainly with the first disciples. In many, many cases, it was an immediate reaction. We don't see many churches doing the traditional Sawdust Trail invitation anymore, and that's okay. But what we're missing, if we don't replace it with something, is an immediate physical response. That's what Jesus said, just follow me. And they came, and they went, and they would go somewhere. What you're doing here is you're allowing them the opportunity to respond immediately while the Spirit is still working, but without the cultural baggage or the hangups that sometimes comes with Deep South traditional invitations. So
yeah. People walk down front. And it's like, I remember, well, what did they do? What do they need to go talk to the pastor about? We take all of that out of it, and you go over to this room off to the side that we've got set up really nice, and with tables and chairs and all that stuff, and they can just take their time. And I feel like that has been a real boon for us. Another thing for us that I think has been very helpful is a real turn towards outward focus. I got these numbers from our outreach director today. I wanted to make sure I was right. 20 cents out of every dollar goes out the door. So 20% of what comes in leaves.
You're not funding just yourself. You're funding well beyond.
Yeah,
that.
we work with our local pregnancy center. We have 2 Christian drug rehabs we work with. We have a health clinic that we work with. We have an orphanage that we work with. We have an orphanage in Peru we work with. We have a school in Haiti that we work with. We've got a myriad of things. And then we do monthly outreach through what we call Dollars for a Difference, where people can give to a specific thing. Like we might work with our senior service center. We might work with one of the local schools helping do Christmas for kids. We just find whatever we can, disabled vets, whatever we can find and do that. And then now one of the things that we're trying to add in is we're now trying to get our people not just to support and give, but to do a better job of going themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're doing like a community serve day on Sunday where we're asking people to come and we're going to go out and do clean up in our community and do some different things on Sunday afternoon. So we're trying to expand that constantly and figure out like what's the next thing that we can find that we can do. And that gets your name out in the community. People know who you are.
And if they come to
Because
church,
you're
they're
doing
going
something.
to likely hear to the gospel. I want to pause a second because I want to talk about a sponsor, but somebody who's really, really doing a great job, and that's called Upward. Do you have any experience with Upward?
We do Upward basketball and Upward flag football.
Look at that. Look at that. I mean, I have gotten to know them personally. I particularly work with Jennifer McCraw, who's their head of marketing, but I've gotten to watch what's happening to churches that are using Upward. Really impressed. I'm glad we have this relationship with them. Mainly, they've done youth over the years, but now they're adding things like you can do. They're organizing 5Ks for your churches for all the runners, and then pickleball used to be just for us old folks, but now it's growing even more. So, love Upward, and I'm glad to hear that you're part of it. That was not a setup. That was really, really real.
Yeah. And Upward, we've got about 150 kids playing in Upward flag football right now, and I mean it's a great outreach because most of the kids that play don't come to the church, and so that gives you a chance to connect with those families. So we consider that part of our it's part of our recreation ministry, but it's also part of your outreach ministry.
Oh,
because you're getting them to come to you. So
yes.
Upward's fantastic. We've been doing Upward here since I would say about maybe 2003, 2004.
Wow.
Somewhere around there, right when they built the recreation centers, when they started doing They were doing Upward when I got here.
Do have not an email. I have a website address, so I want to make sure we got it right. Upward.org/church answers. Upward.org/church answers, and contact them. And if you got a parking lot, they'll set up a ministry there. If you have a field somewhere, they'll set up a ministry there. If you have a gym, they'll really set up a ministry. But they're great folks. Back to your situation. So I want to go back to kind of where we started. I was talking about some of the things you've been through, the death of mom that was so influential in your life, your dad now transitioning. We talked about Charlie, your daughter, your wife on the good side now, going through cancer. And by the way, you know this, but I have a very limited number of people that I put on my prayer app, and I just family, of course, but I try to be sensitive to the Spirit. And I have had this probably a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, about a year and a half ago, she had brain surgery. She had major brain surgery.
Yes.
And that's probably when you added that was when that happened, because I remember reaching out to you when that was taking place.
And there's some words in here I don't know. Surgery on a brain cavernous malformation.
Yes, it's called a cavernous malformation. It was a group of clustered small blood vessels that started to bust within her brain and started to cause bleeding. They think they don't know if it's related to the genetic disorder or just something totally separate. But they went in and fixed it and put her head back together and sent her home. And she's bouncing around. She's at school right now.
Well, you know our buddy Brad Wagner, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Brad's awesome.
He is awesome at Church Answers. Brad's about to have neck surgery.
Okay.
And I said I'm going to be praying that they remove the head in the process. That's that. By the way, for those of you who want to pray for him, that I think is at the end of February. So keep Brad Wagner in your prayers as they do that. Well, here's where I was going with this, Mark. You have some issues in your life that could devastate people. And that doesn't even talk about the things that a pastor has to put up with regularly. And I know you have a great church. How do you keep a focus on leading a church to reach people when the enemy's throwing so many distractions at you?
It's been hard. I'll be honest. Charlie, when she was first born and was diagnosed through the newborn screen in the state of Florida, it was really tough. The easiest thing that I did was pastor the church. Like, that's a weird thing to say, but the easiest thing I did was pastor a First Baptist church in a county seat. Like, that's unusual.
You can't put it in cruise control in many of those churches. They're used to good.
And I did a little bit in her very early infancy because she was in the hospital so much. But one of the things that I focus on the Lord has laid a calling on my life, and I love what I do. And through a lot of the things in my personal life, ministry's almost been an escape. Now there's the personal side of the relationship with the Lord, with prayer and study of the word and trusting in him. And trust me, he's built me through this. Before Charlie was born, my life was on kind of easy mode. I grew up in Mayberry. Mom and dad married 63 years. I mean, it was, I had challenges in life, but never anything great. But after God reoriented me.
The name of the town in Alabama was what?
Ashland, Alabama, but it might as well have been Mayberry. I mean, it was Andy Griffith was a sheriff. I mean, it was how it was.
I told you the coincidence in this. My two oldest sons were born in Anniston, which is just next door.
Oh, yeah. That's where we went to go to. If we're going to the movies, we went to Anniston. That's where we went because there was no movie theater in my hometown.
Yes. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No problem. No problem.
Going about your focus and how you're doing this.
But what happened with Charlie was the Lord really reoriented me, and he took away any drop of self-sufficiency that I had. I had no self-sufficiency left. Like, her health and everything was taken so far out of my hands. I mean, I had protocols that we had to go through if she was sick and things happened. But at the end of the day, it was all in the Lord's hands. And I had to completely just give her to the Lord and say, okay, God, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to take her to the hospital I'm supposed to. I'm going to get her these doctor appointments. I'm going to get her these tests. I'm going to give her the medicine she's supposed to have. But I can't fix any of this. And so I just had to hand it over to her. And so I think it helped me in the long run. It was very, very difficult in the short term, but in the long run, it really helped to reorient me and to take away that self-sufficiency of I'll fix it. I now realize I can't fix anything. Like I'm a train wreck. And it helped me rely on the Lord more. And I think that aided me in being a pastor after that God kind of grew me in a direction and he used that. Would I have preferred he would have used something else? Honestly, yes. Yeah. But that's what he chose to do. That's what he chose to bring into our family's life. And I love my little girl, little redheaded joker. She's the best thing since sliced bread. I love her to death. But that's how God chose to mold me and use me in that. And he made me a better pastor by giving me this child that I had to trust him with.
There's another little thing in there, and I'm going to have to close this. This 30 minutes went like the blink of an eye. But you also, as a result of Charlie's illness, sickness situation, you basically had to make a decision that you weren't going to have any more kids because the risk was too high.
Yeah. It was with it being a genetic disorder. My wife and I are carriers. We're fine, no effect for us, but she got both of our bad genes, and so then there's like a 25% chance. So we just decided I'm an only child, and so she's an only child. At this point. But we just our thought process is we're just going to pour into her. We're going to love her. We're going to take care of her. She's worth about 6. I mean, it's like having a family of 6. So we just pour into her and take care of her. And it's been a real blessing.
Mark, I don't want to end the conversation, but I try to keep us on a time. I don't keep myself on a good time schedule because I'm late to the podcast. But once we start recording, I do. Where would you want people to check you? Like, where's the website and anything else you want to mention?
Sure. FBCOkie.org. You can also look up FBC Okeechobee on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So we stream some of our services. We put up things all throughout the week. So feel free to check us out on all of our social medias. They're all always up to date.
Sounds like Mindy's staying busy on the website too.
Mindy works harder than all of us put together.
I know that y'all all work hard. Thank you, my friend. Thank you also for being a part of Platinum. You've been
absolutely. It's been a blessing.
It's been one of the great, our Platinum coaching. We have 3 levels. Mark's been with the highest level, if not all the time, most of the time anyway.
Since right before COVID.
Wow.
Is when we Braden, you did a micro consultation in Bradenton, and I told you, I said I'm gonna go home and find some money and do this, and messaged you later, and I got set up.
Well, it's been my blessing. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You've just been a great friend. I love watching what you do in ministry. When you get to be my age, you just kind of sit back and see what God is doing in other lives. And it's happening at First Baptist Okeechobee. Scares me that I can say that so fast. It tells you that I have some roots in that area too.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And let us thank once again Cheney and Associates, the accounting firm for the church. 1,100 churches. That's all they do. They just take care of church accounting. People say, well, I've got a bookkeeper. I've got this or that. Believe me, I've heard stories about people who don't have all the qualifications they need. So at least give Cheney and Associates a call. That's CheneyAssociates.com. Tell them Church Answer sent you. Tell them that you heard about Steve Kenny, the owner of the organization as well. And as always, thank for you who are watching on YouTube. Not a big group of folks there, but it's growing. So you'll see things like me sharing my red shirt, which is granddad and what they call me, and established 2009 with my first grandchild. You can't see that if you're on your podcasting app, but we love you on the podcasting app because this is what 95% of you are. But thank you for being there. Give us a rating and review. Give us subscribe at the YouTube channel and tell people about us because we want to share stories about like First Baptist Church of Okeechobee and like Mark McCarter, just so you can see where God is working in incredible ways. As always, thank you for being a part of the Church Answers podcast. We'll see you very soon.